And a very good morning to you. You're welcome along to Tuesdays Off the Ball AM. I hope you had a very good extended weekend. I think anybody who's interested in Irish sport in any way had a pretty awesome weekend. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Rory McIlroy's amazing performance and his rekindled chances at the Masters. Nathan's going to join us just after 9 o'clock. We're going to talk about the hurling. Offaly and Kilkenny close. There was a 65 shootout in the Clare Limerick game in the hurling league. So despite the fact that there was masses of matches called off over the course of the weekend, there's still loads to talk about. Dáithí Regan's going to join us at about 8:30. But obviously, we are obsessing about the fact that Ireland are the greatest rugby team in the world. Screw you, New Zealand. We are the greatest team in the world right now this week. If we played them today, tomorrow and the next day, we'd beat them 3 times. That's what I'm saying.
It depends where we're playing them. We were playing them in Twickenham. Of course, we will beat them.
Oh, we'll hockey them.
Twickenham is now our new favourite ground. It was regal, I felt, on Saturday in an ironic sense. We just kind of strolled up in our kind of our pub mobile of sorts and was like, crown us now, the English, give us the crown, give us your crown, give us the Grand Slam crown that you failed to win last year. We are far superior than you. This thing isn't even going to be a contest, which ended up being the case. And, you know, maybe there isn't that deep sense of, I guess, joy and relief that you had in 09, but it was just this slow burn of satisfaction throughout the 80 minutes.
Yeah, you're still as a supporter out there, you're kind of still like, this could go wrong, this could go wrong, just because you've watched Irish sport all your life where stuff goes wrong, and then it's like, this isn't going to go wrong, there's no way. Like, we look at us, we're way better than this team, but still, until like it's 77 minutes on the clock, you're like, they could score a crappy try and there'd be another crappy try and it'd be robbery. Like, we're clearly better, but it didn't happen.
No, part of me at the time kind of felt that would have been a record win, obviously, in Twickenham had Owen Farrell that scored that late try. But then I'm like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I getting wound up about this thing? This is one of the greatest Irish sporting achievements ever because of the fact, I think this achievement is wrapped up in the idea that the main emotion in this country is excitement. This doesn't feel like a full stop. This doesn't feel like it did in 09 when it was like, finally, at last, we've done this thing. This Grand Slam feels like a stepping stone. Yeah,
although I think that if you flip the games around, we beat England in the first game at Twickenham and we just beat France with a drop goal in the last minute to win it, then everybody would feel the same, oh my God, I can't believe that. So we nearly blew it. Whereas actually, we nearly blew it in the first game when Teddy Thomas. So like, it doesn't feel like it's the end for this team, obviously, because there are so many kids in it, comparatively. But at the same time, I think the manner of the victory probably means everybody's a little bit more complacent than we need to be about stuff like this.
Well, complacency is good. I mean, complacency means you feel you're in a good space, and feeling that you're in a good space is a good sign of anything, really, isn't it?
Well, I think we all felt like we were in a good space heading into the 2007 World Cup when, you know, we'd put together 18 months of beautiful, brilliant attacking rugby. We had strength and depth, you know, some options at various places.
Maybe for this week only, let's not talk about past World Cups. Let's just talk about the one next year, which we're 100% definitely going to win. But in general, when you look at the scenes of jubilation over the last couple of days, you think of Rob Kearney's quotes over the last week when he's like, I didn't really appreciate 09 that much. Well, 09, I don't think it was possible to appreciate it as much because you're coming off that pitch in the Millennium Stadium thinking to yourself, holy crap, that game was incredible. Whereas with England, it kind of felt like, okay, there was a bit of a wind down in the match to a certain extent, and there was a build up to the Grand Slam itself, rather than this microcosm of kind of excitement that occurred in Wales on that afternoon.
And some of the English fans leaving early always helps.
You were there, obviously. Yeah, what was it like? It was kind of a constant stream of...
Twickenham's a brilliant place to go and watch rugby. Like, in fairness to the English rugby fans, although some of them did leave, very few of them left early. Most of them stayed until the last try was scored. They celebrated the second last try and they celebrated the last try, like just as a, we support our team kind of thing, as opposed to, you know, turning on the head coach or turning on the players and booing. But yeah, it's a brilliant place to win because, like, Swing Low is a deep, guttural thing that seizes power and rumbles around the whole stadium, and you're like, oh, that must be a bit intimidating for the players. And then, well, then mistake after mistake after mistake makes the crowd stop singing, and the Irish crowd starts singing, and suddenly it's like, well, actually, you know what? We're by far the superior team here. It was brilliant. Like, I love Twickenham, and they're a really good crowd of people who were like, well, actually, it does look like that was a penalty. You know, that was a good decision by the referee when we were winning another penalty as opposed to, you know, booing him for stuff. Yes. They did want Bundy Aki yellow carded. Well, they were pretty certain Bundy Aki should have got yellow carded.
Well, was there not a certainty on this side of the water as well that he probably should have got yellow carded?
He could have been yellow carded. I don't think you would have complained too much given the rules of the game. The fact that it was head to head and kind of accidental, I mean, it's like he did headbutt your man, make it look like a tackle, get away with a bit of camouflage.
That's all part of the process. But was there like a big Irish operation in terms of like stealing 10,000 tickets off the English and turning Twickenham into just a fortress of green?
I do think because England weren't playing for the Grand Slam that there were more tickets floating about than there normally would have been. Like when the stadium empties, you get a chance to see how many Irish people stuck around, and quite a few Irish people did stick around. So there was definitely an opportunity for Irish people to get tickets in a way that there might not have been traditionally. But I knew a lot of people out there as well who went out to the ground and ended up watching it on the big screens around the area. Which obviously means that there weren't as many as perhaps they thought there would be.
No, absolutely. Well, it was, of course, a fantastic Six Nations. There was many, many great moments. We had Jacob Stockdale's record-breaking efforts. We had, of course...
I didn't know Jacob Stockdale could do that. I didn't know he was that good at like playing rugby. I thought he was just a big lad who could chase and, you know, intercept and tackle, like eventually. But I didn't know he could like drop the ball onto his foot, not break stride, kick it over someone's head, smack it down. I didn't know he could do that.
Well, there's a lot of things he can clearly do. Like, I'm just waiting for Jacob Stockdale to put in one of the great defensive performances of all time, and then finally everybody's like, wait a minute, this player is possibly one of the best Irish rugby players of all time. It was clearly an overreaction to one bad game against Leinster in December that everybody was like, wait a minute, maybe Jacob Stockdale isn't a prodigy. Maybe he needs to be a fully formed rugby player at the age of 21. And we got into the Six Nations and it's like, wait a minute, he's actually one of the greatest kids we've ever seen down in Ireland jersey. So it's great. So you had that insane level of performance from him over the past month and a half or so. You, of course, had Johnny Sexton's drop goal. You had, I guess, just Saturday really was a great moment. And I was thinking to myself, what are the best moments of
a top five, maybe?
A top five of the Six Nations. Do we want
Everybody
a top five of the
5.
2018 Six Nations? So let's start this countdown of the 2018 top 5 moments. And coming in at number 5 is Dylan Hartley's face after Saturday's defeat to Ireland. Look at his poor baby face, speaking to the television there after poor All Ireland came over to poor All England and absolutely destroyed them. In at number 4 is... it's Mike Brown's face after his effort at scoring a try for England was stopped by the ruthless defensive effort of Sean Cronin. Kind of a face on him there after you check your bank account after a heavy Saturday night in Coppers. In at number 3 is Eddie Jones's face after that defeat to France when he realised that the championship was well and truly up for his English side. In at number 2 then is an even better one. It's Eddie Jones's face after England lost to the Calcutta Cup to Scotland and realised that the Grand Slam dream was well and truly over. And of course, the greatest moments potentially in all of Irish sporting history at number 1 is Eddie Jones's face after Ireland beat England in Twickenham to secure the Grand Slam and put Eddie Jones back in his box after Ireland managed to wade through their own levels of scum to defeat the English. A truly amazing, proud moment that I think it just ticks all the boxes. Like, is there a level about this that it's almost beyond belief that we kind of everything lined up so perfectly? That first of all, it's an even number year. So you got to win in Paris, you got to win in Twickenham.
Never going to happen.
Also, the way the fixtures happened, England were last. Also, the way the fixtures happened, Ireland have won every game going to Twickenham. And also, you've got these incredible comments from Eddie Jones, which nobody really cares about, but we got ourselves worked up because we want to get worked up about something.
Nobody got worked up though, really, did they?
I mean, in a completely faux way.
Only the English media got worked up because they're like, you can't coach the Lions now, Eddie. You've screwed that up. The Welsh are never going to... I mean, Wales are like, well, we are a pretty small little country.
I don't think this thing has sunk in. This is the best possible way to win any competition. It has just worked out so perfectly.
Crushing England in England.
It's almost too good. I think give it a couple of days and that's when the celebrations will really begin. We'll just wake up on Friday morning and come in, lads, do you remember what we did last weekend?
Yeah, I think that maybe it would have been better if it hadn't been on a bank holiday weekend so that like you could have 3 full days of gloating and lording. It seems like we might be overdoing it a little bit by still going on about it, but actually I've barely spoken about it.
It's only Tuesday.
I know, we've got a full couple of months of this, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, we should just remind everybody every day that we won the Grand Slam in Twickenham with a crushing display. Under the thumb. England are under our thumb. Time for the papers.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.
Let us start with the Irish Times this morning. They're leading with the rugby. Ireland's triumph of the collective sees them dominate individually. Gerry Thornley's team at a tournament there. Sexton just pips Murray as player of the tournament for his Paris heroics. On the back of the Irish Independent then, they're going with that incredible game in the Gaelic rounds yesterday evening. 100 minutes, 58 scores, 14 frees, 2 periods of extra time and 1 winner. Limerick beating Clare in the Allianz Hurling League quarter-final in Division 1. Colin Ryan of Limerick there scoring the winning 65 in that free-taking competition. It's also the same story on the front of the Irish Examiner this morning. The never-ending story reads the headline. Ryan hits sudden death winner as Limerick edge out Clare in historic league shootout. Meanwhile, on the back of the Irish Daily Mail, free for all reads the headline. Ryan the hero for treaty after 100 minutes of drama.
So I'm just reading a comment from Jeremy Guscott. Ireland don't have any world-class players, but they're playing well as a team. Thanks, Jeremy. I mean, Tadhg Furlong definitely not the best tight head prop in the world, and our 9 and 10 definitely not the best 9 and 10 in the world at the moment. I mean, Bowden Barrett's very good, but Johnny Sexton is just as good, and so therefore you would have a tough decision picking between them. That's the definition of world class. Rice sticking with Ireland. This is the story about Declan Rice. Apparently hasn't actually been contacted yet by England about potentially switching over to play for them. Rice, I only want to play for Ireland. This is obviously the piece that he did at the weekend at the FAI Awards. He was our young player of the year. No, Cyrus Christie was our young player of the year at age 25. I think that's actually true. I think he is actually 25 and he is our young player of the year.
Yeah, that definitely did happen. I Wikipedia'd it when I saw him win the award, and I'm still it still makes me doubt.
I mean, a lot of stuff gone on over the weekend. I'm not sure it did happen, right?
I just kind of I couldn't understand it, so I just said, time to make it night 2 of Grand Slam celebrations.
Injury blows rock Munster. A terrible weekend for Munster, obviously. Keith Earls expected to face a lengthy layoff with his knee injury. Was hobbling around on one leg during the celebrations. But Tyler Blendell out for the rest of the season with a recurrence of the neck injury. He's had surgery. And Duncan Williams out for about 8 weeks, it looks like, with a fractured eye socket and a fractured cheekbone after a training incident. So Chris Farrell already gone, and a couple of others suffering injuries as well. So Toulon rolling around very soon, just 11 days away from that game in the Champions Cup. Declan Ireland, the only team I want to play for. This is Declan Rice. And then Deschamps, I help Pogba, French manager Didier, to talk to unhappy star Paul. So I don't know if Didier Deschamps is going to still be the French manager after the World Cup. Who knows? Shirt, sharp shock. José, you lot must show more respect to the badge. I don't know if you can see from the photograph there, but José Mourinho is pointing to the Aon logo underneath the Manchester United badge. And I don't know if he's actually like, these sponsors aren't paying money to be associated with the crap that you're showing up. Or did he mean to actually point at the badge as the thing that he respects most? I'm sure it was the badge and not the money. Definitely wasn't the money that José was pointing at, going, Aon. Darren O'Dea, there's no grey area with drink driving, but Gibson needs help. This is the story that Darren Gibson will appear in court next month after he was charged with drink driving. The Sunderland midfielder was suspended by the club after his arrest on Saturday following reports of a collision near their training ground. And José's Ramray, this is a story that José Mourinho is weighing up a swoop for Aaron Ramsey. I can't believe there's transfer gossip leading the back pages of the tabloids already when we're 4 months away from 6 months away from the closing of the transfer, 5 months from the closing of the transfer deadline. Shoot me now.
Front of the Racing Post is asking the question about the future of Sam Crow, champion hurdle or chase. Where should Jigginstown go with the exceptional Sam Crow? On the back page then, it's all Joe Hart there and whether or not he'll get selected by Gareth Southgate for England. The Daily Telegraph then, across the channel, things have got to change, reads the headline here. Players' chief says England must address taboo subject of essential contracts of Eddie Jones' side is going to compete with the best in the world.
Read every word of the English press and the protestations that they have about the way that their game is set up. Read every syllable of this that you possibly can and enjoy it, because these are the spoils of victory.
It's been a long time coming. It's not, unfortunately, a big grim back page in the Guardian. It's Mo Salah.
One of the things I heard in America about the future of English rugby is that they're just waiting for the good teams in the first division to get up to the Premiership, and then they're going to the relegation trapdoor will be closed, and they'll get rid of relegation, effectively having a Celtic League style, at which point you can begin to charge the union a bunch of money to essentially contract your players, and that will improve English rugby. But it'll also mean that a bunch of the world's best players head to England.
Or it also means that the best young English players who might be as yet unearthed gems and are playing in the Championship in England might not get their chance. Or it's like, actually, we've got a load of money here, why not recruit some second string player from South Africa or New Zealand, and let's turn them into the top player instead of their own homegrown talent. So I'm all for that. If it's going to continue the downfall of English rugby, then I'm all for that.
Right, okay. So let's move on. Let's bring in some Gary Ringrose here. Here he is talking immediately in the aftermath of Saturday's win to Uisíonn Langan about Ireland's strength and depth.
Yeah, it's an amazing position to be in as a country, considering there's 4 guys, probably 5 or 6 guys, if not more, between all the provinces. You know, we've been battling out for the 12 and 13 with a lot of guys capable of playing both numbers. So, yeah, that's from my point of view. Reiterating what Chris said, there was some incredible work put in by Robbie and then himself, and it was trying to match that.
Wow. I hadn't seen that video. He took a hell of a beating. Was absolutely sensational. Like, better again than he was last week. He was brilliant last week, considering it was first game back in ages. Here's some Jordan Larmour, who obviously saw a fair bit of game time as well.
I think just like we went out with a mindset to go after the game, go after England. Like we had to go out and take our chances and grab them with both hands, and then just to have just belief in your own product. Don't shy away from any challenges, just front up, and yeah.
Here we go. It's a good question. When do they name player of the tournament? Alan, how are you?
Hi, how are you, Ger? How are you?
Fairly soon, I think, isn't it? So the shortlist was published yesterday. Sexton's on it. Murray was on it. They were the only 2 Irish, were they?
I think so. Yeah, I think, look, they were fantastic. People talk about how important they are to the Irish team. And before the weekend, I think my thoughts and a lot of people's thoughts are if they play well, if Sexton and Murray go well, Ireland will be in a great position. Sexton is extraordinary. The amount of physical contact, the bangs, the knocks he gets, and missing that penalty in the first half.
Stockdale
as well, yeah. Sensational return from him, but they're so important to the side, and there was probably a period of play there midway through the second half, even towards the end of the game, where I think Murray made so many tackles in one phase of play. He made 3 tackles, I counted, and just he's covering across the field, and the way he was getting into the defensive line, and giving assurance to guys inside and outside. He covers so much ground. He was just sensational throughout the tournament.
Keith Earls also nominated, so 4 Irish players, not 2.
Yeah, Earls, he was good as well. Massive loss for Munster now, which is not
hasn't been diagnosed yet, but it looks like it was something serious enough.
It's his medial ligament. I spoke to him after the game, and he wasn't optimistic. I think when I saw him out on the field with his kids afterwards, I said, maybe it's not too bad, and I saw the ice pack on it, but he wasn't too optimistic after the game, which is another massive blow for Munster coming up with the Champions Cup coming up.
Medial might not mean surgery. It might mean recuperation.
Yeah. It depends on the medial. It could be if it's grade 3 or grade 2, grade 1, depending how serious and how much damage is done there. You're looking at six weeks possibly. So it's another massive blow for him. He's been sensational throughout the tournament. Just looks so electric every time he touches the ball.
What do you think was going through England's minds when they see Johnny Sexton bloodied and playing a brilliant game, Jacob Stockdale with that outrageous try, CJ Sander with 100 people hanging off him as he charges down in the line? Like, they must be thinking, this is an unstoppable beast that is so finely tuned that they're unstoppable.
Yeah, when you're at the game on, and we were doing the commentary, Dave McIntyre and myself, and you're kind of looking down, and you just see body language as well sometimes, and just even in that period after when Peter O'Mahony got sin-binned, they were battering the Irish line, and Ireland were repelling them, stopping them, getting off the line, getting in their faces, and you see the body language, and players just look a little bit dejected. And I know if I'm in that environment myself, you're like, what else do we have to do to get that score? And the game was just slipping away from them, and they were putting so much. To be honest, I think the uncertainty around the changes and stuff, it's not a bad English side. I think if he played, it's probably their strongest side that he could possibly select for Eddie Jones, but they look dejected, and the effort levels, like if you look at some of the players, Henderson, Furlong, James Ryan, they're just so abrasive and energetic in their tackles, and they were sensational. Levy was unbelievable, and they stopped momentum of Vunipola, Rob Shaw. Simmons wasn't in the game.
Rob Shaw wasn't in the game really either.
No, they weren't, and they were trying to batter away. And to be fair, Hartley made a lot of carries from, and they were running unbelievably hard, and they were just meeting a wall of Irish players. So it goes back to the thing of freshness, and Ireland looked really fresh. They looked like so much energy, enthusiasm, and England looked a bit fatigued.
Can I just talk about the fatigue briefly? Because all the English papers are blaming the amount of minutes that the players have played, but I heard Will Greenwood talking about having been given access to a training session that Eddie Jones had, and he absolutely flays his players. He wants them to be training in that training session and come off it feeling like they've played a test match. I'm like, well, fair enough. I mean, maybe that works for a team who hasn't done loads of minutes, but like, it's up to him then to get the balance right, to know that, okay, I've seen that Anthony Watson's played 1,200 minutes or whatever it is, which is like 900 more than most of the Irish lads. So maybe I'm not going to kill him in training this week. Maybe we're just going to walk through it. Like, it's not just the fault of the Premiership, and it's not just the fault of the way that the players have to play for their clubs. It's also the responsibility of the coach to recognise this and to take action.
Well, it's a really interesting point, and I met a lot of English internationals before and after the game, and it was the common consensus that this team are overtrained. So if you look at someone like Maro Itoje, he probably had six games for Saracens before the Irish lines are being integrated back in with their provinces here. It's a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
Plus their pre-season is shorter. So the key for me, Ger, here is if you have to play a long season ahead, and you often hear it from players over the years, is if you get a really good pre-season, it's like fuel in the tank. So you're strengthening the shoulders, you're getting the core right, you're getting the fitness levels, you're building a really good base, and plus you're keeping contact out of that period for that 5, 6, 7 weeks, whatever it is in the off season, and you're conditioning the body. So you're getting your fitness levels up to a level, and then you're maintaining by managing the workload and stuff like that. I'm really surprised with all the modern technology and the GPS numbers or computer systems they have where they monitor individual players, that this fatigue isn't showing up in their systems. But ultimately, minutes at the end of the day, it can be mental fatigue as well. It can be like, God, week after week after week, we're going again. And the system here enables players to have a rest, a week off. The province, if someone has a little niggle in one of the provinces in a Pro 14 game, they won't play. And someone else will bring a massive amount of enthusiasm who's frustrated that they're maybe not a starter. So it doesn't affect the performance, the team performance as much. They have that bit of wriggle room. It's a frustration. You hear Wales talking about it, you hear England talking about it, and they changed the whole format of the Heineken Cup because of this. Well, the Irish are able to rest their players, they don't pick their best players, but it pays dividend, and the national team here is the money earner for all the provinces. So success with the national team generates way more funds, and that's the primary goal for the IRFU, and it's paid off. You think with the resources England have that they could manage that a little bit better, but the problem they have is with the clubs. They're fighting against the clubs in similar situation, not as bad as France, but if you can't manage your players, and that's the luxury that Joe Schmidt has. So Johnny Sexton is 450 or 60 minutes. Farrell is nearly 1,200 minutes as well.
And so knowing all that, then you don't kill them when they come in training. Like, so Eddie Jones has to take some responsibility.
So last Wednesday, I'll give you an example. He gave him Tuesday off, so it was a rest on Tuesday, and then he brings them out Wednesday, and they're out at 8:30 Wednesday morning, and they do an hour and a half of full-on contact. That's a couple of days before a massive test game. It is, and when I played, and I think you have to do a certain amount of contact during the week, even after good wins, a loss. Sometimes when you have the loss, you get flogged. Sometimes when you have the loss, it's maybe talk about it and make sure the attitude is right and the heads are right. You have to have an element of contact. Is that hitting pads or is it hitting body on body? And he had a body on body session on Wednesday, which, even though the players probably at the time, you know, they're up for it and they're getting stuck in and they feel maybe great, they've got that bit of aggression out, and it does help. If it goes wrong and there's a bit of fatigue. So the previous part of the tournament, these underlying kind of vibes are coming out that we're overtraining. what Eddie Jones is trying to do is replicate the match situation as much as he can. And he did an article, I read a great article a few weeks ago where that's his primary goal, and that's what he thinks the way to win test matches is. Replicate training. It's all well and good, but the body and the mind have to be kind of rested and relaxed as well. And I think he got that balance wrong.
Do you get a sense that the English players are now starting to feel that as well? That they're looking around
well, when you hear these little vibes coming out, so the ex-players are chatting to guys they know within the squad, and it's coming out that, you know, God, we've another long session, or we're flat on our feet and we're exhausted from the week's training. And it only takes 2 players to start mentioning that to someone else, and then somebody else goes, yeah, I feel a little bit fatigued, and then when the losses are there, you tend to go towards that in your own mind, that this is why we're losing, because we're overtraining. I'm surprised, because most professional teams, whether it be club or international, they have a leadership group who give that feedback to coaches. But I think Eddie Jones is fairly bullish that this is what he wants. He'll review the tournament now, and they'll look back, and I guarantee you the feedback coming from the players that we overtrained. So if you have someone like Greenwood who's been in around the session, he knows a lot of the guys, he's saying it openly on Sky Sports yesterday, that's the case. They're being overtrained.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. To go back to Ireland, we'll go back to Ireland in a minute. Let's hear from some Joe Schmidt. Here he is talking about how well the younger players handled themselves during the game on Saturday.
At the same time, you know, had Gary Ringrose really grow in stature and boss that back line with young Joey inside at 10 and outside with Jordan and even Jacob. He's still a kid. I think people, because he's played every game and he's done incredibly well and he's growing and learning, people maybe take for granted that he actually hasn't had that much rugby at this level or even provincial level for that matter.
Yeah, it was some shiner that Gary Ringrose had. Andy Dunne, good morning to you. How are you?
Hi, Ger.
We're just revelling in this, picking apart the faults of the English rugby system. But we should talk about our own for like a couple of minutes, because this is the triumph of the entire rugby culture and rugby system. When you look at the amount of kids who are in the squad, when you look at the amount of essentially rookies who are now first teamers. So Dan Levy was supposed to be holding this jersey for a period of time until Van der Fleer comes back from injury, or until maybe Rhys Ruddock, but definitely until Sean O'Brien comes back. And now it's like he's our number 1, number 7 at the minute, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's in his nature to hold a jersey for others. The type of guy he is. I spoke to John Fogarty, who's the Leinster forwards coach, about 2 years ago. He had flagged with me and a couple of others in the same conversation how good this guy was, and what he was bringing to training was this level of toughness and being so combative and physical in training. Even as a young guy, he was trying to lay down a marker in training sessions. So yeah, it doesn't seem like it's in his nature to come in and sit and hold the seat warm for Josh Van der Fleer or Sean O'Brien, and I think that's exactly what is happening across the breadth of the squad. I think we had 7 lads on the field at the tail end of Saturday under the age of 23, winning a Grand Slam. It's pretty amazing.
7 who never lost a game for Ireland. It's unbelievable. I always think back here of when all these young guys coming through was when Leo picked all these rookies 2 years ago against Bath, when they were, they'd lost, was it 4 at that stage or 5 Champions Cup games, and it just gives guys an opportunity. And when imagine the amount of young guys in all the provinces now will see the likes of Ryan, Stockdale, Carberry, Larmour, and say, well, I can do that. It actually gives you a shot of confidence. When I was kind of coming through into the Irish squad, you're looking at guys 23, 24, 25 who've been there, done a lot of stuff, and you're thinking, God, what will I be like in that environment? Am I confident enough to be there? The confidence levels, and I think you've got to give Joe Schmidt massive credit for that, to be able to give them confidence. But I think the intriguing thing is for a young player to come in and they get the detail, they get the information, they process it, they know their role, what ruck they're hitting, what line they're running, where they're supposed to go. They're probably in fear of making a mistake or error in that system, but they repeat it so much, they have to know it so much, that then when they go out and do it and this stuff starts paying off, they go, this is, I'm able to do this. They're not thinking about, God, am I looking around at the surroundings and maybe looking at the opposition players, they start believing, then they start to execute, and they go, well, I'm fine with this. This is what I can do, no problem. And then the natural talent kind of pays dividend, So it's incredible.
Well, I think you touched on, Ger, it's a culmination of over 20 odd years of when the game went professional in '95. There was actually originally discussions would the clubs become professional.
Yeah,
the club game was huge, and you were involved in whatever 5 or 6 All-Ireland winning titles with Shannon, and back in the early '90s, Sky Sports were covering young Munster against Blackrock in the All-Ireland League. So someone somewhere made a really, really, insightful and incredibly smart decision to say, we'll do provincial rugby as professional, make those our clubs. And now I think
the system was there, Andy, wasn't it? We had our provinces, so it was a natural thing, and we're the envy of most of the world with the system. And probably there's a bit of frustration, and it's why the Heineken Cup went to the Champions Cup, and this change happened because the English were frustrated about the way we were able to rest players and the system we're in. But it's paying dividends. We haven't a huge base of professional players, but to be able to put it all together is phenomenal.
That's all clearly very important, right? And that's the architecture of how it's supposed to work. But clearly the biggest thing that we have going in this country is the school system. And the school system obviously comes in for a lot of criticism because it's very elitist, and the amount of money and resources that it gets is huge. And sometimes the best young youth players are harvested off and offered scholarships and taken away from their clubs. And fair enough, that's all. And there's probably too much emphasis placed on it by the individual schools. And yet it is also the best academy system in any sport. It's right up there with La Masia at Barcelona. Listening to Stuart Lancaster talking about the difference between Ireland and England, is like the school system. Like, you come over here and you see the quality of coaching. They're getting strength and conditioning from the time they're 13. They're getting skills coaches from the time they're 13 all the way through to the age of 18. Like the fact that a bunch of players could basically walk from St. Michael's to the Leinster team to the Ireland team and win Grand Slams.
The pathway is very clear. The pathway is very clear, and for young players, they now have the ambition to go on those steps, if you like. But you think of all the private schools in the UK. Surely that system there.
I think they don't play each other.
Get lost as well in the system, and it's phenomenal. And to be fair, Dublin is you see the evidence is there in that team. You look at all the young players we're talking about, bar Stockdale, they're coming out of the Leinster Academy, and it's a numbers game up here as well. And that's not a bitter Munster player.
And something needs to be done to make sure that it's not just the only way, the only pathway.
Number of schools, and they've come through, these guys. It's phenomenal. I think this team will be judged ultimately, fairly or unfairly. Unfairly, I think, because we know you can't take away from a Grand Slam and go, well, we've got to do something in the World Cup now. You can't take away this bit of success from them. But the naysayers will say, well, can we do it at a World Cup? And that is a challenge now. How do they address it going forward, Ger, and how they manage the pressure and expectation?
Yeah.
Because if I'm playing against, some of these young guys, James Ryan, I'm on my toes. He's going to get that every week now. Yeah. The attention is there with them, so it's how they handle that going forward.
We'll talk a bit more about that. I know you've got to go. Before you go, tell us who's your player of the tournament.
Look, Stockdale's return is phenomenal. It's just phenomenal, the amount of tries. Earls was brilliant. Sexton, of course, for that drop goal, that moment, and just his resilience and strength sometimes in adverse situations. His physicality. I think of a tackle he made against Ross Moriarty against Wales right in the line. He just puts his body in the line. But for me, I think Murray's all-round game, his ability to kick, defend, make line breaks, bring guys into the game. He's sensational, overall consistent contribution. He makes some errors on occasion. He's not completely immune to an error, but his level of consistency has been phenomenal throughout this tournament, and such a leader, so calm as well. So I think for me it's Murray.
Who have you got?
Furlong.
Right, that's interesting, because here's Dennis Hickey talking about Furlong being in the mix for World Rugby Player of the Year. Hickey was speaking on Sundays Off the Ball.
We talked a lot about Tadhg Furlong already. He's, I think he'll probably be himself, Sexton and Murray. Certainly if Leinster have a strong European Cup, he'd be thereabouts for World Player of the Year, I would say, by the end of the season.
Is Furlong, is he a freak that Ireland are lucky to have, or is he actually, when you look at these systems that are in place in Irish rugby that have been developed over the last 10-15 years, is he almost a prototype of that coming to fruition?
I think it's a bit of both. I don't think you could create a player just out of the system, a player like him. Obviously, he's a very skillful player. He is an incredible athlete. Like, he holds 20 stone around for 60, 70 minutes. And I was watching him yesterday before they took him off, and because I was thinking, I wonder if they're going to bring Andrew Porter on. But the impact at collisions, the impact, the clean-outs he was doing, like up to the minute before he was taken off, was almost as intense as it was after the first couple of minutes. So he's a phenomenal athlete, you know, to be able to do that, to be able to have that athleticism and engine just to be able to keep going, considering what front row forwards have to do, pushing, scrumming, rucking, etc., lifting, and then the presence around the field. And he's got great hands. Clearly he's got great hands. He's a very good footballer as well. So
he's a pretty good footballer. It was amazing. It's just been it's been a ridiculous Six Nations.
Well, I think it's really interesting the way Schmidt deploys him on those set piece plays. It's really brave as a head coach to set up, you know, really, really well kind of regimental and researched plays to break down an opposition off your tight head, you know, and the way he made that pass to Bundyaki, I was covering the game, I was at it, and to be totally honest with you, I had no idea what had happened. I couldn't.
No,
I couldn't work it out.
2 or 3 times I couldn't.
It was so many angles and decoy runners, and in the middle of it all, you've got a tight head who's been lifting in the line out, as Dennis alludes to, hitting rucks with high intensity over a long period of time, scrummaging in the most difficult position to scrummage, and then to give him the responsibility of actually making a play where he's pirouettes and he passes blind to a guy who's coming at a completely opposite angle. I remember we played Wales, we lost to Wales last year, and Furlong, he knocked on twice as a first receiver. So it's not something, okay, he's excellent at it, but it's also something he's been put in the front line there, and he's got better at it as well. And he's very comfortable on the ball now, making passes behind strike runners as a decoy or actually hitting guys in. But I just find it phenomenal that a tight head can do that at that level. It's hard enough as a 10 or 12.
Yeah, he credits Joe Schmidt with it, and Schmidt obviously tried it a couple of years ago against England as well. And that just tells me that the more we've got Joe Schmidt and the longer he is Ireland head coach, the better and better he is, and the better he's getting. He's still not at potentially his peak as a head coach, which is a scary thought, really.
Yeah, I think ultimately you're looking at a guy who enjoys researching opposition. I think who enjoys being locked away in a room and working out nuanced plays to break down an opposition, and arguably there's no one better at that kind of one-off magical kind of power play, and again to pull it out of the flames like we did on Saturday. That one particular play I didn't realise, but I think Joe in his press conference just gave a little brief insight to having used it 4 years previously, and we realised it was probably going to work again based on the combinations of England's midfield. So yeah, I mean, an incredible student of the game.
That, sorry, I missed it. So 4 years ago.
Apparently 4 years ago we ran the same play against England and cut them open. Right. And he pulled it out of his toolbox. He said he's only ever used it twice as a coach, both against England, both based on their defensive system in midfield. And it's so smart because Sexton has at times been criticised for overusing that loop where he runs around. So the whole play is based on Sexton running that loop play. And in slow motion, if you look at it, the England centre has turned his whole body outwards, anticipating Sexton's loop line, and Furlong hits Bundyaki into the space. So clever.
I think it was an individual error in 2015 that actually stopped it from being a try in the end. But as you said, they did open England up. Like it's no coincidence, clearly, that this error count in crucial situations has dipped, because first of all, this is the first time we've been in a Grand Slam position under Joe Schmidt, so this was higher pressure than any other game we'd played under him, and we're making less errors. As I say, that is not a coincidence at all. And it's the basics you do as a coach. You'll be able to tell us as well that cutting errors out, doing things correctly is the basic. But when you're a professional, to go from that 95% to that 97% or whatever that is great testament to him to be able to reduce those errors in those tiny, tiny margins.
Well, his attention to detail on every detail on every day at training is what sets him apart. I think there's the famous moment when he was, I think, about 2 weeks in with Leinster, and O'Driscoll got a ball around his shins, and I think Darcy had made the pass and put his hand up and said sorry about the poor pass, and Schmidt turned around and said, well, I think good players can catch them. And suddenly O'Driscoll was knocked into shape, who was the king of Irish rugby at the time. So he doesn't suffer fools, he doesn't spare anyone the glare of his analysis. And I do think a line to that, players are pretty scared of making a mistake, but that's obviously no bad thing when it transfers straight into success at the highest level.
That was the debate. It was about the team look like they're robotic and scared of making those mistakes to the point where they're not trying stuff. But you talk to some of the players who were around in the early days, and they point out that like the style of play was based on the fact that we had a bunch of really classically Gaelic football gifted high fielders of the ball. So we used to play that kicking game. You remember the first couple of years when we were winning championships, it was like we would kick the ball, Tommy Bowe would go and get it, or Rob Carney would go and get it, or somebody else would go and get it. And that was him looking at his available talent. Now it's like, my talent is different, I'm going to play a different game. And so they are allowed to offload.
Yeah, there were some interesting stats going into the England game. Our front five forwards passed the ball the least of any front five forwards in the competition. That was including Italy. So he still has the shackles on, that's for sure. But you can't argue against him, because what's actually happening is we've albeit prescribed and prescriptive and robotic at times, it's robotic and successful, and it's what you would argue in hindsight, and it's easy to do in hindsight. He's built up a level of confidence through grinding out wins and through winning at times not a pretty way, but who cares, because if you lose in a pretty way, he's going to get lambasted anyway. And I grew up watching Ireland play for 60 minutes in the late 80s and early 90s and playing some nice football, and then last 15 minutes falling away, and everyone went, yeah, well, that's our lot. Yeah. So I don't think we can be overly critical of a robotic style, provided it's successful. You obviously have had some access, and this is the other part of it. He's very giving of his time to the Irish coaching fraternity, and he understands his role in Irish rugby. But you got some insight into the level of research that he does when he gave you access to some notes. Yeah, it was about 3 or 4 years ago. By a funny kind of quirk of fate, one of our club players was. He was more or less surplus to requirements with Leinster, but he was central to us as an amateur club, and we asked could he be released for a crucial league game, and Joe said no. We needed a 25th or 26th guy, and he was his employer, so it's absolutely fine. So I think he knew I was crestfallen by his decision, and said, look, I tell you what I'll do is come in and I'll give you an example of what I do to analyse the opposition. So he pulled out a document. It was a couple of 100 pages worth. I figured it was his caseload for the whole year, and it was just his notes on a Glasgow game from a Friday night. So he had watched that game, I think 6 or 7 times through, 80 minutes in full from various different angles, and he had taken that many notes, and this was Sunday evening, so it was probably 48 hours later. So I think I realised at that stage I'll never be a professional rugby coach. But and I'd imagine he's developed from that again. And obviously a lot of these guys have huge support staff and can delegate. Well, I actually think with Schmidt, there's a part of that approach that he loves that makes him feel prepared, that makes him feel very much central to his management role. He's a hands-on coach as opposed to a standoff director of rugby. A lot of them can be quiet and cerebral in the background, and you're not quite sure what they're actually doing. Yeah, because they've got a head coach who's hands-on. I think Schmidt is very much the hands-on guy. You see him running the back line in the warm-up before the Six Nations games. He's sprinting around. He's all action. So I mean, yeah, he's a different breed.
It's kind of inevitable at this point that he becomes All Blacks coach, and that is a terrifying thought of this Ireland team going up against an All Blacks team led by a man who knows more about Ireland than potentially any other coach in the country, given that amount of content that he's watched.
Yeah, it's a scary thought.
It only happens when we're already world champions, though, so it'll be all right. We'll be the World Cup holders.
So yeah,
we can take that.
Has been completed.
Yeah.
Pretty much. One last thing I wanted to get your thoughts on kind of the younger players, just because Quinny mentioned earlier on about England and not so much the physical fatigue that they've experienced in this competition, but the mental fatigue. And obviously when you bring in players like James Ryan and Dan Levy and the likes, they look at somebody like Johnny Sexton and his levels of professionalism and they learn so much from that. They grow as a player because of that. But I suspect it works in the other way as well, that there is no mental fatigue in the camp because you've got this new breed of talent coming through, and the likes of Johnny Sexton and Conor Murray are seriously benefiting from that new energy in the camp.
Yeah, well, I think that's true for across the board in sport. When you look at successful sporting teams, Kilkenny under Brian Cody, Dublin with Jim Gavin, Manchester United under Fergie. I think Fergie set a premiership record of 77 premiership games in a row without picking the same starting 11. And when you're prepared to bring in young guys, which actually it probably has been quite a surprise in terms of, we would criticise at times Schmidt's conservatism. He's been anything but in terms of his selection policy. He's bringing in guys like Larmour, Ryan, who are unproven even at provincial level. So he's shown a huge...
Since the last World Cup.
Yeah.
Clearly somebody who can learn from his mistakes.
Absolutely,
and that's, you know, like, it's okay to criticise people, but you have to stop criticising them for doing stuff once they change.
Absolutely. I think he was so chastened by that World Cup experience because we were a strong side going in, but the over-reliance on the senior pros within that team came back to bite him, and I think he's certainly taken it on board, but these young guys just add some freshness to the group that gives the Conor Murray and Johnny Sexton a lift. It probably gives everyone a kick up the arse, and that, like, they've got to watch my back in terms of selection the following week. So yeah, it's super stuff.
A couple of quick other things on that. So there was a view expressed during the week, I can't remember where it was, but just that the leadership now is more diffuse than it would have been when it was O'Driscoll leading by example and O'Connell leading by example. So when either of those two come out of the team, like O'Connell does in the last World Cup, it's like, what the hell are we going to do now? Like, we would obviously feel the same if either Murray or Sexton went. Like, if they both went, you'd be really screwed. You'd feel like one or the other of them would actually be able to drag us through. So having Rory Best as the captain is actually, because he's not this totemic, I'm going to kill the opposition on my own figure. He's a far more, like...
It's a father figure.
It's hard to explain that without making it sound like you're somehow diminishing two of the greatest ever rugby players to play for Ireland. But you know what I mean? Like,
he seems like more of a Democrat, Rory Best. And I thought one of the really interesting things was, at one stage, it could have got close on Saturday, despite the fact we were definitely the better side in terms of execution as the game went on. But he didn't drag it out in terms of his substitutions. He took off Sexton, he took off Furlong, and he trusted the younger guys to go in. Carberry was on the field over 30 minutes in a Grand Slam decider. So he's diffusing that responsibility. The leadership is spread across the team, and it's menacing thought for any of our opposition in going into the next 18 months.
In a way, it makes the case for neither Sexton or Murray to be the next captain. That actually, the best thing to do is not to burden them any further, or to elevate them beyond where they are. Like, they're already obviously clearly on a plateau. So pick somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, if Best is going to have a period out of the team to keep him fresh for the World Cup, which wouldn't be the worst thing that ever happened. Like, so
Peter O'Mahony.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's any queries over Rory Best staying on for the next couple of years as it is. But if you're talking about the leadership as a whole throughout the group, I don't think there's any question over Murray and Sexton. I think Schmidt's biggest challenge in the next 18 months is wrapping them in cotton wool enough, and getting the other guys in to manage. You know, God willing, the two lads remain fit and healthy for the next 18 months and as influential as they currently are on that side. But we do have to be smart and pragmatic, and we do have to cover in the event that something goes wrong with one of them in the lead up. And I think he's not only has he managed to do that in serious competitive internationals, he's actually done it in a Grand Slam decider, which phenomenal in terms of the confidence that will give to the likes of Carberry. We do. I think we need to make a decision, or certainly to give a lot more game time to the likes of Luke McGrath, Kieran Marmion also, because it's probably the one position where we have relied on Murray so much. Sexton's had more injuries and therefore we've had to bring in other people. Murray's been very much fit, healthy and reporting for duty at a high level every week. So I do think we need to be smart in the next 6 to 8 months and maybe the summer tour, give Murray a break.
I think because the case is being made at the minute that you go down there and you win that tour in Australia and it's it's the first time we've ever won a Southern Hemisphere tour, but ultimately I don't know if that matters more.
Second, we won one. Ollie Campbell won one.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Sorry,
Australia,
that's right. Yeah.
Single-handedly, apparently.
So the value of that is huge, and I see the momentum and all that kind of stuff. But actually, if you have a first choice backup to Murray emerge, and you also have 3 tests for Joey Carberry, and you have 3 tests for Andrew Porter, and somebody else starts at hooker, and we win or lose, ultimately that's not going to dictate the fate of the group, but it will definitely accelerate the speed at which we get good.
Yeah, well, I think Schmidt has clearly got the respect of a nation now. I think if he, leading up to Australia, was transparent and said we're going to use these games to develop players, I don't think anyone's going to have a problem if we lose 2-1 in a series by 2 or 3 young guys going out there and making a few mistakes. He's on the back of 3 championships and a Grand Slam, and he's looking to develop, and we all know what happened in the previous World Cup because of lack of depth. So I don't think there'd be a single argument if we managed to not have a successful summer tour, but 3 or 4 guys got 80 minutes at the highest level. So no doubt he will want to go and win 3-0 down there. But I think he could be forgiven for blooding a few players and the result maybe not going our way at that stage.
Andy, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, Ger.
Andy Dunne giving us some thoughts there on the Six Nations Grand Slam. We're going to be talking about this forever, it turns out, because that's how it works. We're moving to hurling now, though. Here's Brian Cody and the Offaly manager Kevin Martin chatting to Usheen after their league quarter-final where Offaly pushed Kilkenny all the way.
You've gotten, I think, better throughout the league. Is that fair to say you've improved? Can you tell us how you've improved?
Oh, I think, you have to improve as you go along. It's the nature of the thing. We're in a quarter-final today, and to play the semi-final, obviously we have to improve again. That's what you'll be looking for. Small bits of improvement the whole time as regards every aspect of the game. Physically, hurling-wise, everything about it. That's the challenge for yourself the whole time. And today we certainly learned what it's like to be in just a really hugely challenging, physical, intense game.
Are guys learning how to use the ball in those kind of ruck situations and in contact situations? Is that the key learnings that we're seeing so far? The younger players are kind of getting used to that intensity.
Yeah, I think they are very, very much, but they have to, because it's physically demanding, and players have to get out. And remember, it's still the league. The championship has to come yet, and it's going to step up several notches in the championship.
Good to see Ger Aylward back out there. Unlucky not to get a goal in the first half.
Yeah, I know Ger's had a tough time with injuries, and it's great to have him back, and it's not just going to be automatic that he just steps back and shows the same form as he had before he was injured. But he's a terrific player, and Ger will. It's very important to get game time into Ger.
Do you need that kind of older head out there? Because you've got good young talent, but as much experience as you can get, I suppose, is a good thing.
Oh yeah, you need a balance for sure. You couldn't have enough of experience, but at the same time, what we have, I suppose, really now is every time we sit down to pick the team, we have a panel and we have players who are, you're saying, will he make it or won't he make it? Who will we pick? Which player will we pick out of the following 2 or 3? It's a much better option than just saying, look at.
You have to find consistency as well, because if you can push Kilkenny this close, then maybe you could have done better in 1B in the regular season.
Yeah, but the Alliance League is for trying out players as well, and we came in at the start of the year, we picked a good few different players that were not in the panel the last couple of years, and we had to try them out and give them game time, and we learned a lot through the league as well. But really it all boils down to championship, and championship is the one that you have to really get tuned for. So we're 90% there with the panel that we really think is going to do the job in the summer. So I have to say I'm happy enough with the way progress is going.
And finally, there's a pride about the Offaly hurlers, I suppose, on the outside, which I know that you try and keep that out, but that's a good thing, isn't it? When there's positivity, when you have Michael Duignan practically crying over tweets, that's a good thing, isn't it? To feel good about being an Offaly hurler again.
Yeah, I mean, we all love Offaly. Offaly, we love Offaly, and you're not called a faithful county for nothing, and in fairness to the guys, it's positivity breeds positivity, and we're trying to keep all negative stuff out of the camp, and it's starting to grow, and the players and the supporters starting to get behind us, and we need more support out. We need these guys shouting on our guys, or the supporters shouting on our guys all the time, and just hope that we can build.
Dáithí Regan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ger. How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Are you as positive as Oisin was making out there?
Well, it's been a pretty positive league, to be fair about it. We had a really good win over Dublin, and then we would have expected a lot more against Limerick. That was average enough, and I suppose last weekend the defeat to Antrim, but he did try a lot of players out, and that's just the way it's been historically with Offaly. I mean, we have probably of the top echelon of teams the greatest record of losing to Antrim and Down over the last 20-25 years, and that was with teams that won All Ireland. So we didn't look too much into that, no more than we can't look too much into yesterday either. It's been an up and down mixed bag league for us, but yesterday you could take even more stuff out of than even the Dublin game, because number one, the support that was there yesterday, it was quite extraordinary that within 10 minutes after the game, it was incredible, Jeremy, include myself in this, leaving the ground, and I'd say there wasn't 100 people left in the stand for the Offaly Sligo football game. It was absolutely huge crowd for the hurling, and then the whole team just cleared out afterwards, which I suppose is unfortunate for our footballers, but that's not what we're talking about. The difference really yesterday was Walter Walsh and TJ Reid. They were just incredible. They were the difference. Outside of that, Offaly matched them in every facet. We marked man for man, no sweepers. We've a very big, strong team. Offaly have really big forward line that's huge. Nearly every one of them is 6 foot plus. But the difference was just that extra bit of class that the two boys brought to it up front for Kilkenny. But in every other facet, we were really good.
From a generation of Offaly hurlers where being second was unacceptable because of the quality of stuff that you were actually able to do, and the fact that Burr was so successful as a club, but also the generation before you had actually got over the hump and won All Ireland. So you were into a culture where there was an ability to see the victory. This current team haven't really had that. It's been a long time since your generation actually were winning All Irelands, and what you're talking about there is two veteran All-Stars in the last 5 minutes being the difference between a young Offaly side and a Kilkenny team. And from an outside perspective, I'd say most Offaly people would say, Jesus, this is acceptable. We can at least begin to see a pathway back to being a credible team competing with the Kilkennys of the world.
Jared, that's you're absolutely correct. It's very interesting you've brought that up. I mean, as someone said to me after the game yesterday, imagine we went out last year to play Waterford and Tullamore in Championship, playing 2 and 3 sweepers. So what a joy it was to go out yesterday and just watch toe-to-toe hurling. And what we did was, Kilkenny are a very talented bunch of players, but we gave them no space. It appeared every individual was given a job. When it lands in your 15, 20 square metres of turf, it's your job to win it. So there was no fail-safe, there was no hiding, there was no, we'll play sweepers and we'll bring it down. At half-time, Offaly were winning 110-10, and it was a really strong gale. And I was thinking, what's he going to do the second half? Are we going to withdraw somebody back? And I was thinking, I hope you don't. Just go for it. It's a really good performance. Don't go for it. Even at half-time, you were kind of thinking, don't hemorrhage whatever happens. And the complete opposite happened. Kilkenny scored the first 4 points within 7 minutes, and you're thinking, here we go. And then they just dug back in again into a really strong breeze, and the crowd were just fantastic. And afterwards, there was a sense within the first 30 seconds of a real disappointment, but everybody stayed and waited and applauded the team off, and that was spoke about afterwards yesterday. Wasn't it great the way they went at it? But listen, now the preparation starts. I mean, the reality is we could in a few months' time be looking at a scenario whereby Offaly are no longer going to be in the 2019 championship because of the structures that have been put in place. If we don't come out of the 5 Leinster teams that are competing, if we finish bottom of it, we won't be playing Leinster Championship Hurling next year. We will be playing in the Joe McDonagh Cup. So there's positive signs there, but I'd always be conscious of the fact that, geez, this could turn bad. You don't want to think it could, but that's the reality. You know, we could be playing Joe McDonagh Hurling next year, but for now it's pretty good. But we've had a couple of bad losses prior to this as well, so we just need to keep a semblance of reality on it. But people like what Kevin is doing, and people like the honesty.
In terms of this match against Kilkenny being a particular gauge for Offaly, is there a sense that this could actually turn out to be quite a good year for Kilkenny, and by extension this result would look very, very good for Offaly, because everybody's kind of cited the number of 50 players that Brian Cody's had in and around camp? It turns out a hell of a lot of them are very, very good.
Yeah, you know, if you just took the game in isolation yesterday, which is all I can really comment on, I would say I wouldn't be looking at Kilkenny as one of the top 3 contenders. I really mean that. Again, it was the 2 experienced guys, as Ger alluded to earlier, that really stood out. Outside of that, you would pick young Ben Keneally, left corner back for Offaly, I would say, as in the top 3 performers yesterday. But I looked at Kilkenny and I thought, there was no one there that was hurting us. There was nobody there with a bit of genius except for the 2 boys. And I have to acknowledge that although Kilkenny lost the first 2 games, kind of a lot of us felt, well, you know, this is not totally unsurprising. They done very well afterwards. Looking at them yesterday, they fought hard because they had to fight hard. Brian Cody spoke about meeting the physical challenges. He's right, because they did have to meet physical challenges. Offaly were extremely physical yesterday. But just looking at them, it's just, you know, they got over the line yesterday is what they did. But again, listen, it's one game, we're analysing one game, and lots of things will happen over future games. I don't think at the end of the day it's going to be something that Kilkenny will look back at it and say that was a watershed. And I don't think we look back at it and say it's a watershed. Games are going to come so quick and fast now that you know, eating bread is soon forgotten. You just got to concentrate in every game, because it's going to be really cutthroat in the Leinster Championship.
Let's talk about the other game that did actually manage to get played over the course of the weekend. Ultimately, it was decided by a 65 competition after extra time in the Clare Limerick match, with Limerick coming through. What's your take now, having seen a couple of these shootouts? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's actually a good thing?
Yeah, I have no problem with it whatsoever. There's a myriad of different views. I have no problem with it. I think we're already running into difficulties for the month of April that's allegedly set aside. Players were cramping, players were tired. I mean, what's wrong with it? You know, someone has to win the game, and it's been a novel idea to me that the GAA have thought outside of the box and said, okay, we need to finish them. I think to physically ask them to play another 5 minutes either side, I have absolutely no problem with it. The players seem to be somewhat entertained, which amused me a little bit, because there was a really serious prize here. You know, getting to a league semi-final for both of these teams in particular, like it's embryonic in relation to the new management structures that's there, and I felt the win for either team was really, really critical for development. But the players seem to have quite an enjoyable time looking at it. But in effect, I don't have a problem with it. I quite enjoyed it, actually, to be honest with you.
Maybe a penalty shootout there's actually an opportunity for both teams to influence it, where a goalkeeper gets a chance to save.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's been trialled. We've seen it in the Walsh Cup with Wexford, and that's not a bad idea, Ger. Somebody did suggest that when we were looking at it yesterday evening, you know, even more entertaining. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And it means that you've got to practice these things. And it's a great skill of the game, both for a goalkeeper and for a taker. But it was entertaining, yeah, but I think you have a good point there, to be honest.
One last thing about Limerick. Obviously, this is a Limerick side that still doesn't have the Napier players, and now won't have them for a while longer. There's a sense that this is different this time around from Limerick, and that they've got promotion after 7 or 8 seasons in the second tier. But it's different from the Limerick side that won the 321 All-Irelands in a row, that they have culturally learned what you're supposed to do with young players, and that's the ones who are ready, you put them in straight away, and the ones who aren't, you keep them part of the system. Like, it just feels like things are finally turning for Limerick hurling.
Well, maybe. Let's wait and see. I mean, to have won 3 under-21 All-Ireland titles and to have not annexed the senior title, albeit, let's remember, it coincided with the greatness of Kilkenny. It's very unusual to be able to win 321 All-Ireland titles and not get something from it. So there's a caution attached to Limerick. I have to say, I really like what they're doing. I spoke to Joe Dooley at the match yesterday, and we were saying, they're a team that they bring a lot to it. They bring a lot from every facet to the game of hurling. I think they need to win an All-Ireland title. I would, to be quite honest with you, I'd have them up there as good as Kilkenny, with as much of a chance as Kilkenny have, whatever way you want to read into that at the moment. I do think Limerick are a good side, yeah.
Dermot Crowe actually had a good piece on them in the Sunday Independent a couple of days ago, and he was speaking about this lifting the treaty 10-year plan, and of course there's a lot of McManus money involved in that. Not every county has access to that sort of cash flow, but when you dig a little bit deeper into it and you look at the joined up thinking, for the first time ever in Limerick, the senior coaches chatting to the minor and under-21 coaches and kind of trusting the process as opposed to trying to win individual underage titles. And the other thing that stuck out to me was the person that was quoted, his name escapes me at the moment, but that Dermot Crowe quoted in the piece saying that the highest the highest rate of attendances for training at underage level with the Limerick minors also coincided with the highest leaving cert points. So clearly there's a focus on good quality education and players keeping their lives together outside of the pitch as well as keeping their lives together on the pitch, and that sort of thinking seems very progressive, and it seems like something that's clearly benefited Limerick in the long term and something that other counties could certainly learn from.
Yeah, I agree with you. I read the piece, and it was interesting as well. The same individual you were talking about made the point that it came through a pretty extreme underage system in Limerick, that what they were looking for was the quality of the individual. You not only, apparently, it would look like, have to be just a talented player, you had to be a rounded person in many aspects. And I thought it was very, very interesting to see that they're looking for the person. And if you look at the likes of Dublin, I think there's a couple of points you hit on there. I think the financial aspect, if you look at Wexford Hurling, you look at Limerick, you look at Tyrone football, you look at Mayo, you look at Dublin, you look at Kerry. It's not an accident that these counties are well funded, and rightly so. But there's a huge divide there. But I do think in Limerick it's interesting that they're looking to create an individual. They want an individual who has a makeup of being a very talented player, but just a lot more to him than that. And effectively, on big days in sport, I think we talk about a man, expressing himself and the difference between certain teams. I think when you get a really good bunch of players who have it in every facet of their life, it improves the whole dynamic. There's an intelligence within the group. They can talk problems out. So I think it's an interesting aspect to what Limerick have been doing down the years, and I'd like to see them actually be able to get the rewards for it. But it's an interesting dynamic they've created. Very interesting.
Great stuff this morning. Thanks a million for joining us.
Good morning, gents. Nice to talk to you.
Dáithí Regan giving us his thoughts there on some of the big weekend hurling stories. We didn't even get to the Cool and the Piercing draw. We'll get to that again later on in the week. Plenty of time to talk about that ahead of the replay. Now, OTB AM this morning is brought to you with Air, the home of Air Sport. Get amazing live sporting content free with Air Broadband. Obviously, one of the other big stories the weekend was Carlow getting promoted from Division 4. Have a look at what it meant to the players.
We're actually going up. We're actually going up. We're actually going up. And now you're going to believe us. And now you're going to believe us. And now you're going to believe us. We're actually going up. We're actually going up. We're actually going up. And now you're going to believe us. And now you're going to believe us. And now you're going to believe us. We're actually going.
Steven Poacher, the Carlow coach, is on the line. Steven, good morning to you.
How's things? How are you?
Yeah, pretty good.
Good stuff.
Happy scenes on the bus. What was that dressing room like afterwards?
Oh, hey, listen, it was special. It was special now. Just listening to myself on the phone there, it brings a smile to my face because, it was an overwhelming feeling of relief probably at the final whistle. Something that the county has dreamed about for over 33 years now of getting out of Division 4 and progressing, and the relief and the absolute overriding joy was just brilliant. It was fantastic, and I suppose for myself to seal it in the north of the country was nice too. Because it meant the bus journey home was pretty much full of fun.
When did you end up getting involved with Turlock, and how did that all come about?
Yeah, it was quite random actually. Turlock and Tommy Wogan came down to my coaching day that I run every year in St Clements, Kilkeel, my own school. It's a coach education clinic, and the guys came down about 3 years ago, and they asked me to come in and take a couple of sessions. So about 2 years ago, I took a handful of sessions in 2016. I think 2 or 3 sessions before they played in the championship, and at the end of that year, Turlock had asked me to get involved in 2017 on a more sort of permanent basis, and obviously, you know, the travel factor and things like that was very much, you know, in my thoughts. But I decided to take the plunge, and I went down in 2017. And you know, at the start of the National League, we probably took, I would say, we took a session, maybe 1 session a week, 1 football session a week. And then as the National League progressed, it went to 2, and then obviously come the championship, it was more full time. So obviously then 2018, we sort of reset our goals after the summer of 2017, because we really probably were the story of the championship last year, you know. And I think, you know, our goals then obviously had to be to push on and progress and drive for that promotion.
Yeah, so just to go back to 2017, not to skip over too much, because when you say you were the story of the championship, like, there was definitely one of those Saturday evenings, the game was on TV and everybody starts tuning in going, hang on a second, what's going on here? How is this going to happen? And like, where did that come from last year? Where did that sense of adventure as the championship progressed actually start to infect the players, and when did they begin to believe that something was possible?
I think personally the turning point was we drew away to Westmeath in the first round of the National League, and we really thought that we could compete in the National League last year. But then the following week we were dealt an absolute hammer blow when we lost at home to London. And you know, to come from there where it was, the changing room was just, it was toxic, you know, it was horrendous feeling, and you know, everyone was a lot of soul searching after that. But we took a bit of a gamble after that, and we went to Armagh on a Saturday to cross McLean to play Armagh in a challenge game. And it was a big gamble, because you know, we were going down there with a number of injuries. We were going down on a Saturday, a couple of people weren't available, and you know, we ended up winning by a point. And I felt we came out of that and we discovered a few things. We toyed about with a few things that day, and we unearthed a certain Sean Murphy that day in the middle of the field. And you know, I think the lads grew a lot of confidence from that, and you could see the progress developing. We actually won our last 3 games in the National League last year, so we've actually won 9 consecutive National League games in a row, which is no mean feat, and is a tremendous record. But I could definitely feel the momentum growing from the second part of the league last year. I could see it. I think the players started to believe in the system a little bit more. People were a bit more comfortable with the way we were playing. And I feel we carried that into the championship, obviously, when we beat Wexford, the first Leinster win in 6 years. And then obviously the game against Dublin, you know, and people look at that Dublin game and probably think, you know, Dublin, it was the only team Dublin didn't score a goal against. They hardly even created a goal chance against us. And, you know, I know there was a lot of factors in it. It was Dublin's first game. It was in Portlaoise and different things like that. But we actually, you know, we installed a belief into the players that we could compete with the best, you know, and that was very important. And then obviously our wins against London and Leitrim were fantastic. And, you know, against Monaghan, it was 9 points all with 5-6 minutes to go, and we had 3 or 4 big plays and got the ball turned over on all 4 occasions. A lack of experience probably, and we could have beat Monaghan. You know, we really could have. So I could definitely sense a belief and a momentum gathering from the second half of the National League last year. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it certainly seemed to me after that Monaghan game that there wasn't a sense of contentment, that it was like, all right, we held our own against a Division 1 team for most of a championship game. There was a sense of disappointment, and there was a sense that Carlow can actually push on from this, that it wasn't like, right, 2017 was a great summer, that was our lot, that's our journey, and that's done. That felt like the start of something. Yeah, there's no doubt. And ironically, actually, the Monaghan game, 2 weeks before the National League, we went on a training weekend. Well, it's a training weekend. We went for an overnight stay in the Johnston House in Kildare. We trained a couple of times and we played a challenge game in Sligo. And actually, on that night, I had done a bit of analysis on the Monaghan game, and we did a bit of video work on it. And I think, you know, it was important to go back to it and show the lads how close we were, you know, to challenging a Division 1 team, and, you know, and showing them more or less how close it could have been, in the fact that if you'd have beaten Monaghan, you'd have been playing down in Croke Park, and you'd have been 1 game away from an All-Ireland quarter-final, you know, and that's how close things were. And it wasn't just a token gesture, well done Carlow sort of thing. We could see and smell progress. And, you know, testament to the lads, have been fantastic. Turlock is a brilliant players man. He's a brilliant man manager. He looks after players, not just physically, but mentally as well. He looks after players and gives people breaks when they need to take breaks. There's no gun held to anybody's head. I hear stories of county players feeling they're trapped, county players not enjoying training. We certainly enjoy our training, and we certainly enjoy our wins. And, you know, players are allowed to express themselves. We're allowed to talk to the media. We can, you know,
it's a wonderful place to coach in, to be honest with you. It really is.
Yeah, they've been sending match reports after games. Like, they've been completely open and have actually won a bunch of neutrals over by the fact that they're WhatsApp match reports out going, I've seen some of them and they've been hilarious. And it's actually like, it's the type of thing that GAA really needs, particularly in divisions 3 and 4. So there isn't this sense of players being trapped, and that actually we all remember that the players love doing this, and that's why they got involved in the first place. Just to go back to a couple of things, Stevie, the style of play that you've built, obviously with a team like Carlow, where there is this long, deep-seated, multi-generational history of defeats. What was the system that you wanted to put in place, and how do you begin to build that, and what's next for that?
Well, look, it's like anything, you know. It's a process that takes a period of time, you know. And I could see progress, you know, last year, but obviously we wouldn't have been content with certain aspects of the game and certain aspects of our style. And obviously, the very first thing was that myself and Turlock identified was defensively we were conceding too many scores. And you know, I think the basis of any successful team is to get that aspect right first and foremost before we start looking at the offensive end of things. So last year was very much, you know, work in progress. It was very much install a template that gave us a great, you know, strong defensive platform to build from. And I think after the National League last year, in the 4 divisions, we were the 3rd best defensive record in the 4 divisions. Now, obviously, this year then was step 2 and stage 2 of the progress, and that was obviously to develop the offensive end of things, you know. And I suppose I know certain people in the media obviously a little pop at me for some game or something I put up on when I was doing a coaching clinic a few weeks ago, the name of the game or something like that. But it's quite ironic that people would be quick to criticise these things when they've actually never seen them, which always makes me chuckle. But no, I think the offensive end of things has improved massively this year. Like, we've scored 107 points. You know, we scored 10 goals. We have a plus 35 scoring difference. You know, I think we've averaged about 18, 19 points a game this year. And even against Antrim on Sunday past there, you know, we were the first team to score a goal against them. Antrim are obviously very, very defensive, and they get a lot of bodies back. They play a very rigid system themselves, and you know, even to go to Belfast and score 112 shows that the offensive end of things has definitely progressed, and I think that's testament to the players. I've asked them. I've produced a template for the game plan. I've said there's your role. You know, we've made the roles clear, and the players have all accepted their roles, and I think that's critical in any system, in any team, that you have role clarity and then you have role acceptance from the players, and that's something that we've hammered home from day one, that we will provide the roles clear as day. It's up to them then to accept them. And to be fair, certain players have sacrificed their own game and have worked very, very hard to play. And the thing of it is, it's working, and the players can see it's working, and it's been successful. And you know, I suppose that we're still progressing. You know, we're not finished yet, and we're still progressing. There's absolutely no reason why this momentum that the players have and the county has now can't be harnessed and push on next year as well. There's no reason at all.
You brought up the criticism. Well, let's just talk about it, because it was Brolly, and he had a go at a tweet you had about there was a session you were holding in Skerry's Harps, and you listed off the games that you were playing, and triple transition scoring game, multiple restart transition game, drop down and drive transition game, kick and transition game, run it or kick it transition game, blast off transition game. What are those transition games?
Well, look, I think, to be honest with you, I think it wasn't just Joe. I think there was a guy, Parkinson or something as well, on a radio show. I didn't listen to it. I don't listen to his show, but I think he had a bit of a nibble at me too. You know, and to be honest with you, I was laughing because these games, ironically, and this is the funny thing about it, Joe was very much critical of the whole defensive aspect of things, and ironically, there was 9 games, and all 9 of them actually had a scoring element in every one of them, you know. So, like, the games are named. Young players love listening to a name of a game. You can call a game any name, you know, but every game has to have a certain name, you know, because at the end of the day, we're just going to play this game. Well, the reason we're playing this game is because this is stereotypical of a sort of a thing that might happen in a game. So you're playing games that are relevant to game situations. So, for example, the drop down and drive. So 4 players would run, they would drop down, the other 4 players would break from deep. So you're actually recreating a situation where there might be gaps appear in the field where you're looking to actually break lines, you're actually looking to create overlaps, you're looking to create 3v2s, you know, 3v1s, situations that just occur in a game. You know, kick and transition, like you're in the middle third, like so you kick the ball in, you transition, you move forward. Like transition's not a new word. It's not a new word. Transition has been in Gaelic football for hundreds of years. Transition is the ability to move from one place to another place. So it's the ability to move from defence to attack and vice versa. You know, and like Joe actually wrote an article, and it was absolutely hilarious. And the only reason I read it was because it's a paper that I write in myself, for Gaelic Life. And he wrote an article, and he talked that Dublin don't transition. Like, what nonsense is that? That's nonsense, like pure and utter nonsense. Like, Dublin have the reason Dublin are so pretty on the eye. To be under no illusions, I sat in Croke Park last year and watched Dublin playing Tyrone. Dublin don't play man to man. Dublin have a very, very rigid defensive system, but they break with so much pace and so much flair that it looks really, really offensive. You know, and anybody who's got any sort of an analytical eye for the game, and anybody who knows anything about coaching will know that and will respect that. You know, and I think that some of the nonsense that was talked about, and to be honest with you, it actually drove us on a little bit. Not me personally, obviously, but I take criticism on the chin. I can handle it very, very easily, but. You know, for people close to me, like for the likes of my father, you know, he would obviously have taken that criticism very personally and things like that. And you know, I think it's pretty unfair, you know, when you're judging something that you've never ever seen, you know. But listen, it helped us, and it wasn't just Joe and the likes of that. There was a lot of other little nibbles in the media at us, you know. People love to poke fun at Carlow. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the colour of the jersey, small county. But we had a lot of little motivational tools there that we used throughout the year, and it actually helped drive us on. It was fantastic, you know. And we didn't need much other motivation, but it helped. Every little bit helped, you know.
Can we just go back a little bit, because it feels to me like there's a bit of a suspicion of coaching from certain aspects of punditry, where I don't know why this is, but like it feels like GA punditry hasn't quite yet evolved to the point where we can have conversations about what's actually happening on the field of play. Like, Dublin have a basketball coach teaching them how to play Gaelic football, and like that to me is the ultimate. Here's the best team that we've ever seen play Gaelic football, or certainly one of the two best teams that we've ever seen play Gaelic football, and they've got a basketball coach teaching them what the roles are to try and apparently it was allegedly to overcome the blanket defence, but it was obviously clearly far more far-reaching than that. So the evolution in thinking from the best and most successful county is to look outside the sport and take one of the most technically advanced coaching sports there is, with lots of terminology around it, and translate this into Gaelic football. So it seems to me that the trend is actually in favour of a better, higher elevation in terms of coaching and the descriptors that we use around it, as opposed to this, I don't really understand what these words are, and so therefore it's bollocks.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt. And you have to embrace other sports. You know, like you look at Jim McGuinness. You know, Jim McGuinness was one of the greatest innovators in Gaelic games when he came along 5, 6, 7 years ago, whenever it was, you know, and he obviously turned a Donegal team who had been beaten by 15 points out the gate in Crossmaglen in 2010 to within a kick of the ball the following year winning All-Ireland, you know, and obviously then the year after that won an All-Ireland comfortably. You know, people were very critical of Jim's system, but people were quick to forget that the way they played, the scores they rattled up, the same with Tyrone last year, you know. And I think that the opportunity to embrace other sports, other coaching methods is better for our game, you know, and it's going to improve our game, obviously, ultimately improve our game. Like, we started back in November just playing a bit of football, and I'll be completely honest with you here now, Damien Sheehan, who is the strength conditioning coach for Carlow, does a lot of work with the lads in the gym. You know, we've access to Carlow IT. There's a lot of there's a lot of good structures in Carlow in place, but every session on the field, it revolved around the ball. It was player-centred. It revolved around the ball. It revolved around offensive play. It revolved around small-sided games. It revolved around scoring. We never once sat players down and says, run from there to there. It was always with the ball. It was always thinking, you know, game situations, right, this is what happens here. And trying to ultimately create thinking footballers. You know, and I think that you ask any Carlow player, and I'd be disappointed if anyone said otherwise, but you ask any Carlow player, have they enjoyed training this year? And they've loved it. They've loved coming to training. They come to training with a smile on their face, and they leave with a smile on their face. And maybe that's just my style. You know, every style is different. I don't judge people. You know, I respect all coaches, and I probably respect the view of coaches who are brave enough to put themselves in the front line. You know, I don't really respect people who sit and criticise coaching when they've actually never had the balls as such to actually go and do it themselves. You know, and that for me, those opinions don't really matter. You know, it's the opinions of people within the game who know the game, who, you know, are coaching themselves, who are putting themselves in the front line. Because I'll tell you what, it's a tough gig. It's a tough gig. And with the way the media is and the way social media is now, you know, you put yourself out there. Like, we certainly had a target on our backs this year. You know, people criticised Carlow there, you know, last year for, you know, probably the social media aspect or whatever, that, you know, we're plastered all over Twitter, we've done nothing, whatever, you know. But we embrace that. You know, we embrace that. The players have a laugh, they have a joke. You know, you talked about Sean Gannon and Paul Broderick doing the little podcast for the weaker counties, and I thought it was hilarious. You know, and the lads would say, what do you think? We'll put that in. Sure, why not? Why would you not put that in? It's real. You're human. You know, the lads are human. They're people. Like, you know, they've got lives outside of football. Football is to be enjoyed. Like, you know, it's not to be a chore. Like, and that's something that we've created. That's a culture we've created in Carlow. That's, you know, a testament to Turlock. He's a fantastic players, man. If lads need a night off training for an exam, they get it. Like, I'm hearing stories here locally, like, of a lad that went away for a weekend with a girlfriend or something like that, and he was dropped or something along those lines because he missed one training session. Like, and like those stories are horrific. Like, you know, I don't know why it happens, because players have lives. Like, you know, football shouldn't be going hell to the head. It should be enjoyable. It should be there for a release as well. And I think as well too, and it's probably something worth mentioning, in a society and an era when there's so many problems, you know, socially, and a lot of mental health problems as well. And I know, like, at some stage in your life, 1 in 3 people are affected by it. I think football is a great release, and you know, there's no better sanctuary, there's no better place. You're in with your friends, you're in with your family, you know, you're in with your teammates, and that's what it's been like in Carlow this year. It's been a real family atmosphere. We've created a culture in the county that has been like a club team. And I think that's one of the greatest challenges at inter-county level, is trying to create that club culture. And that's something we've certainly had, because the spirit and the camaraderie among those boys is absolutely unbelievable. And it's one of the best. It's one of the best I've ever worked with and ever been involved with.
Yeah, I guess it kind of sums up what the GAA should be, because I think that there's this element at the moment, and to a certain extent it's a correct element, that there is a protectionism against the elitism and the protectionism of what the GAA stands for and where it's come from, and to stop this spread into the over-elitism, as in you can talk about the Sky deal and stuff like that. But I do think when you talk about the protecting of those GAA ideals, there is sort of a regaling against new ideas when it comes to on-the-pitch stuff, and there is a stubbornness against, I guess, tactics, and I guess thinking about the football in a different manner, which is a different thing. I mean, you can enjoy your football and think about it in a very smart way as well.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt. Like, at the end of the day, you know, we've tried to create a training environment there where the players, you know, everyone knows what's going on. You know, let's be under no illusions. Like, I want probably going back again. I don't want to touch on it too long, because it's not about that. It's about Carlow. Like, but going back to the names of those games, for example, like, you know, that it's. You're right. You know, we would have had a number of calls this year, things like you try and be innovative, you know, you try and be creative with your coaching, and the players know exactly what's going on. Like, the players know exactly what's going on. They're not stupid, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, I think it is about, obviously, you know, you talked about elitism, and it's something I might actually just go on to it. It's something that sort of grinds my gears a little bit. Like, take, for example, the Sunday game. You know, you look at last year, the coverage that Carlow got last year, the calls for a P championship, you know, and I'm very passionate about this, and it's not just because I'm working with Carlow, because at the end of the day, my own county Down here, if Down are to lose their next 2 games, would that technically put Down into a B championship next year? Because I know fine right it wouldn't sit well with the people here in Down, you know, because Down have an aspiration and an expectation every year to win Ulster titles. So you're telling Down that if they get relegated to Division 3, you're in a B championship. It would be frowned upon, you know. And I think one of the things, and just without going off record here, off track, is that when you're talking about a B championship, would it get the respect? Like, there's, for example, last year, Carlow got 54 seconds, I think it was. It was actually very funny. We joked about it, we laughed about it. 54 seconds of coverage, I think, the night we beat Leitrim. You know, 54 seconds on the Sunday game. You know, I think 2 weeks ago, Colin O'Rourke was on the show. He couldn't even bring himself to mention the word Carlow. We were top of the league. We were actually top of the league on score difference, and he was talking about Laois. You know, and I'm sitting there like, absolutely bamboozled, thinking, like, what? Like, if that's the respect that you're showing, like, you know, it hasn't been promoted in 33 years. And fair play to Martin Clark, he was in the show on Sunday night, and he did mention it, and he did talk about it a little bit, and he talked about how Carlow were a prime example of a group of players who were, you know, after chasing one thing and one goal, and, you know, Spillane mentioned it a little bit, but like, if that's the level of respect you're getting, like, I'm to be honest with you, I am sick and tired of listening to the same, you know, nonsense coming out of the same people's mouths every single week when they're interviewed. You know, oh, it's going to be a very difficult game this week. You know, let's have something new. Let's have something fresh. Like, for example, last year when Turlock was in the Sunday game, like, a lot of people wouldn't have known that Turlock O'Brien had wrote a book on cycling last year. You know, a lot of people wouldn't know that his passion and his love is Carlow, and it's cycling, and he cycled all around the world. You know, like, are those stories going to appear about just for talk's sake Jim Yavin, for example? Probably not, because they don't allow people in. You know, and it's this, you're talking about elitism. Like, we need to be very careful in the game. And I think stories like Carlow should be embraced a lot more. And it's not just Carlow. There's so many other counties out there with stories. There's so many other managers out there with stories. You know, go and give these people the coverage. Because, to be honest with you, people are sick listening to the same stuff every single week. Like,
yeah.
I think boring. Right. It is boring, to be honest with you.
No, I think the attitude that you guys have to making the players feel free to go out and express themselves as human beings off the pitch, you're beginning to see the impact of trusting them on the field, and you've obviously had that as part of as a cornerstone of your philosophy. So listen, it's been brilliant talking to you this morning. Thanks so much for making the time for us, and we'll talk to you again real soon, Stephen. Cheers.
Not a problem. Thanks very much. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Steven Poacher, Stevie. You can follow him on Twitter. He's an interesting follow.
Absolutely, he is unbelievable passion there.
Yeah, it's great.
It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. It is like the feel-good story of one summer quite often doesn't make it over until to the next calendar year, because such is the confines of amateur sport. But it seems like we might get another year out of this Carlow team, and it's great. He's certainly a man you can certainly get behind in terms of his views and stuff like that. There's passion brimming there.
Messianic, you would say. Right, OTB AM and Golf Weekly are giving you the chance to win a 4-ball at Mount Juliet. All you have to do is tell us who was closest to the pin when me and Nathan made a recent trip to Mount Juliet.
So we've had a cracking day here at Mount Juliet, and we want you to come down as well. We're giving away a 4-ball for one of the best golf courses in Ireland, following the footsteps of Tiger Woods, of Ernie Els, maybe beat the course record of Garcia and Goosen. Who knows how good you are? All you got to do is guess which of us, myself and Ger, is going to get closest on this hole, the third hole, the par 3, 174 yards, wind gusting off the right. If both of us end up in the water, we're just going to keep doing it until somebody eventually lands
so this might never
on
happen.
Green grass. All you got to do is leave a comment either on Facebook or tweet us with who you think, Nathan or Ger, and we will pick out a winner. 174 yards. Oh, it's a smooth strike with that brand new Callaway Rogue. Is it coming back in? Oh, it's in the wet stuff.
It's up, up and away, and away, and away, and away, and away, and away she goes, somewhere deep in the dark, misty woods.
Oof. We might get that ball back at least. Are we going to call that in play?
Here we go. Oh, looks like it's on target. Oh, it's leaking to the left. Splat! Splat, that means I win, right? Well, to enter that competition, just tweet Ger or Nathan to @GolfWeeklyOTB and @Mount Juliet. Nathan, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
We didn't bring you on to humiliate you about me winning that competition.
The more I think about it, I can't believe, considering we could have edited that as many times as we wanted, that we just didn't take another few shots and have our best one landing on the green.
Yeah,
that's a beautiful thing.
That would have been much better. I see you've got your Rory gear on.
Okay,
there.
I've been wearing this since Sunday night.
Yeah, all right.
I'm on brand. I'm proud to wear it now.
The fans with typewriters and microphones thing. You're like, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, screw it. Freebies.
Well, don't mention the war. So, there's a possibility that golf is about to become the best sport in the world, right?
There most definitely is, because there won't be a sporting event like it if we have Tiger Woods in contention on the back nine at Augusta in just over 2 weeks' time. And we have spent, probably 6-7 years saying, imagine if this had happened. It's never going to happen. Right now, there's a definite possibility it could happen. It could well have happened last Sunday night. Tiger, when he had those 3 birdies at the start of his back nine, suddenly he's within 1 shot of Rory McIlroy. And you're thinking, wow, imagine if these guys end up going to a playoff. This is everything you would want in professional golf. And it's hard to remember a time where a Masters has been so well set up with practically every single leading player in the game on top of their form and Tiger Woods in the mix. Because, all right, we wonder, would you get McIlroy against Thomas or Spieth, and what that would mean, probably more for golf fans. But if you put any of them, even Sergio Garcia, Justin Rose, somebody like that, up against Tiger on the back nine of a major, with all he's gone through over the past decade, it's going to be as good as it gets.
So there's a bunch of other videos which we'll release about how to hit stingers and draws and fades and stuff. But when we were talking about the Tiger stinger, there was generally a consensus that Tiger's game has changed a little bit from the absolute peak, and obviously his game was perfectly suited to Augusta. Is the new Tiger's game as suited to Augusta as the old Tiger's game?
Well, Augusta is sort of a peculiar course in that you can have misses as long as you know where to miss it. Now, Tiger's big problem has been in the last 3 or 4 weeks, he's still nowhere near he needs to be off the tee. He's off the tee probably where Rory was on the putting green over the last 2 weeks. He's just making too many mistakes, and we saw that again. That's ultimately what cost him on 16 with that drive out of bounds. He had done something similar in the opening round. At Augusta, if you hit that bad a drive, as we saw with McIlroy back in 2011 when he suddenly found this house on the 10th that nobody had ever seen before, it can kill your round completely. You see it time and time again. So that would be the one concern, that off the tee, 1 or 2 terrible errors will result in a double, triple bogey at Augusta, and you ain't coming back from that. But every other part of his game is perfect. And what he said, actually, interestingly, after his round was that he hadn't really been trying to tinker with anything over the last couple of weeks with his driving, even though it had been so bad. But now he's got a break in 2 weeks before Augusta. He's going to go back. He's going to make a few changes. And if he has any even slight improvement in his driving, you'd have to think with the rest of his game, with the experience he has around Augusta, he's going to be right there in contention.
And then you take that and you flip it really with Rory, as you said. You turn it onto the greens. Talk to us a little bit about Brad Faxon, because clearly he's had an impact on what he's done with Rory. Have they worked together for long? Has this been the main reason why he's reduced it to something like 100 putts for the week at the event at the weekend?
It seems so. They're not actually even officially working together. So Brad Faxon was a good PGA Tour player who was regarded as one of the greatest putters of all time. And Rory and him basically, it seems, spent a day together and worked more on the mental side of things than the technical side of things. So Brad Faxon asked Rory McIlroy, what are you thinking about when you stand up in the tee box? And McIlroy, nothing. It comes naturally to me. Whereas he's thinking 100 different things. He's way too technical with his putting. And McIlroy said, well, I've got to the stage, and the advice he gave me was, well, just take it like any other shot. If you miss, you miss. Move on. Forget about it. Whereas he seemed to be reading far too much into every single miss, spent way too much time. We saw this at the Irish Open last year. You might have been with us, Ger, when he was playing with Ram and Matsuyama. When they were on the green, he would spend the entire time while they were putting, practicing his technique, trying to find something there. So it seems just by feel and going what he feels comfortable with, he's had this week. And this wasn't any sort of decent putting week. This was comfortably McIlroy's greatest putting week he's ever had. It was far and away, statistically, ahead of any other professional tournament on the PGA Tour he's been involved in. And you top that with, he led the field in driving distance, he led the field in proximity to the hole, he led the field in scrambling, and he was miles ahead of everybody on the greens. You end up with him winning like that. So I do wonder if it was sort of freakish in just how good he was. But the thing with McIlroy is, generally he's been around, should we say, like the 100th best putter on the PGA Tour. If he's averaging being the 20th or 30th, he's going to win a lot of tournaments. He doesn't need that week every week.
So my theory is that Tiger being back is a kind of possibly a lot of crap. He could get back to being a contender. He will never be
a lot of crap. He was tied for the lead last week, and he was one off the lead this week.
Let him finish his theory. Come on.
My point is that when you say Tiger is back, I'm talking, destroying the fields at Augusta. I'm talking about peak Tiger in the early part of the century. He will get back to where he was around Torrey Pines maybe, and that's a very, very good rendition of Tiger, don't get me wrong. But when you say Rory is back, I think that completely makes sense, because for what you just outlined there statistically, Rory is back.
Yeah, and if he keeps this streak of putting going, he's going to win a lot of tournaments. This happened to him after the Masters that he blew up in 2011. He met Dave Stockton, and he goes and he wins 2 majors over the next 18 months. Then he seems to get back, gets too technical, looks for more advice, and it falls away again. But we know if he has an 18-month stretch like that, maybe he will win 2 majors. I would disagree on Tiger. I sort of felt the same over the last couple of months, that what's the best we can expect, that maybe he might win another PGA Tour event, maybe we get a couple of majors that he might contend in. The way he's played over the last couple of weeks, I think you got to revise absolutely everything. He's going to go to Augusta as the bookies' favourite, and with good reason. It's not just on the history, it's what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. And I think if he can somehow sort out his driving, if he can get any improvement in that, we're talking about a guy who could well win a major this year and could win multiple majors.
So we were in America, Nathan. I don't know if you knew that we went to New York last week. You didn't get to come for some reason. It's the second trip you haven't made the cut to the States. But anyway, people were talking to us. They were stopping us and going, "What's the story of McIlroy? Why is he his game's gone to shit? What's going on?" I think it's to do with not having JP on the bag anymore. Somebody was saying the conspiracy theories abound when McIlroy's not playing well in a way that only I'd say maybe Roy Keane has ever had conspiracy theories in Irish sports history abound before. But it was important for him to get that win for all sorts of reasons, not least that the Masters is right there, but that he's made all these changes in his life, that he's, you know, he has completely changed as a person. He's grown up, and now he's winning as a man for the first time, really, it feels like.
Yeah, and he did win for the first time with Harry Diamond on the bag, which I'm sure will make a difference as well. The other part of that is that he took this three and a half month sabbatical, and he talked that up for so long that I need this break. I'm going to go analyse every part of my life, when I turn up for tournaments, what I eat, my diet, my gym routine, everything. And when I come back, I am ready. And then he turned up in January in the Middle East and played really well. And then it just started to slowly fall apart again when he went over to California. And you thought, here we go, more excuses. What's the next change? Because he has changed, with the exception of Michael Bannon, his swing coach. He's changed absolutely everything in his life, both on and off the pitch. So I think it does reassure him that he's done the right thing over the last 4 or 5 months, and that he is now in a position where he can go and contend. And remember, Augusta is very much a horses for courses type place. McIlroy's had, 4 top 10s in the last 4 years without ever really contending. But we do know from 2011, when he shot that opening round 65, that he can play Augusta. And I think he's going to take massive confidence. Like, it couldn't have come at a better time.
What's your take on Rory talking about the fans over the weekend and saying that they need to limit the amount of alcohol consumption on course? We obviously had Justin Thomas getting a fan kicked out 2 or 3 weeks ago at a different event. Do Justin Thomas and Rory McIlroy just need to man up?
It's a strange one. I think the problem is that you have the Phoenix Open. So this all came off the back of the Phoenix Open, which has been turned into sort of a spring break for sport, where they had 250,000, they had over 200,000 people on one day, on the Saturday of the Phoenix Open. And everyone is absolutely locked. But because everybody's locked, there's a constant noise. So when you go to the par 316th, the famous hole with the stadium, there's constant noise. So it's fine, you're expecting it. I think the problem now is that there's just individuals are getting braver. They know they'll get on the TV coverage. So you're not expecting it. If you're standing over a 10-footer, you're not expecting suddenly as you're about to hit that putt, somebody shouts out of nowhere. At the darts, you go to that, again, they're used to the background noise. I think it's just something that maybe the PGA Tour, can you stop people drinking? You want to make it an attractive day out for people. It's a very corporate event. People go and they have their few glasses and bottles of wine and have a jolly good time. You just throw people out, but I think they're going to have to put up with it.
Nathan, last question for you. As our resident Mayo apologist, Andy Moore.
Hold on, I get my Mayo jersey on.
It was dealt with at the time. Nothing to see here. Move on, folks. Is that what you're saying?
Listen, I think the TV footage was extremely grainy. I couldn't even comment on such matters, but it was very grainy. I think the referee bumped into Andy. I hope he's okay.
I think Andy, all that working out in the gym is you know, protecting him from the heft of Maurice Deegan. So he's going.
Well, if we had proper coverage of these league games, and we had 8 different cameras with all the angles, like we had when Sky were covering the Dublin Carlow game, then we'd be able to properly analyse it. But unfortunately, you know, the one camera means that we just don't have the views, so you can't find somebody guilty on that.
There is news, though, that Lee Keegan has been injured and there's damage to his shoulder, which they're going to scan today or tomorrow. If Lee Keegan is going to miss any significant time at this stage of the season and isn't fully fit for the start of the championship, then suddenly that 3-1 or 4-1 about Galway in Connacht is the bet of the season, right?
Well, it already looks like it's the bet of the season. Like, Mayo have probably at their lowest ebb in 6 or 7 years. The only hope, and if it was any other team besides Mayo, you would probably feel, yeah, this is definitely the end. You sort of feel like Mayo are just challenging us constantly to see how far we can write them off before eventually they come and bounce back. Lee Keegan shouldn't even be playing now. Remember, the hip injury meant he was going to miss the entire league campaign. He somehow got back earlier, so he seems to have pretty incredible powers of recovery, so I wouldn't rule him out just yet.
Nathan, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
Nathan Murphy joining us this morning to talk about the amazing return of Rory McIlroy. What a weekend. What a ridiculous weekend.
It's the weekend that has probably sparked the most excitement in me in terms of a sporting outlook. Just because of the age profile of the Ireland team, just because of Rory, there are 2 things that you're like, oh my God, the future is so bright. In the short term when it comes to the Masters, and indeed the long term when it comes to October 2019.
We need a young hooker and backup scrum half, and we need some game time for Joey Carberry at 10. But by the way, when Joey Carberry comes on, right, he gets creamed by one of the English back rows who just smacks him, and he bounces back off the turf and slides on his arse, and you're like, ooh, and then he's just straight back up. But the next thing he does after that is this unbelievably flat pass that kind of tempts one of the English defenders to put their hands out, and suddenly, I think it might be Ringrose, is like, he's away. It's like just this unbelievable power to pass the ball in a way that, like, so Sexton is a completely different player. Sexton's getting the ball and doing the wrap, which obviously leads to the, you know, but it's a beautiful thing. It's like there's a kinetic energy that he has. There's a force field around him when he's moving as well. And like, I'm not in any way worried about the fact that our natural successor at 10 to Johnny Sexton is a completely different player who is a beautiful thing to watch.
No, I think what we need to do is organise an Irish rugby combine and measure each person on their skills. Like, who is the best passer in the team? Could it possibly be Tadhg Furlong? Who is the best kicker outside of Johnny Sexton? Who's the fastest? Who's got the best step?
We're going to do an AM rankings on this. It's a good idea. It's possible that Levy is as strong as Furlong. Like, when you see him when he's at the bottom of, like, he gets the ball and you think, okay, he's been stopped there by the 4 English lads around him, and then he just puts them on his shoulder and makes like 4 or 5 yards like a beetle.
He's a clamp. Like, once he's down in the ruck, there's no moving him. But it's body position as well as strength.
We've given you an absolute bumper edition of the show this morning. We've gone way over time. Apologies to the people who listen to the audio only feed. It cuts off at 9:20 because they thought, these guys aren't going to shut on for more than 20 minutes. Well, we shut it on for an extra half an hour bonus time today. Well, that's your Grand Slam. It was ours anyway. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow, obviously. A big show tonight from the lads on the radio. Plenty more to come your way in terms of Grand Slam reflection and analysis and reaction, and looking back at the weekend's GAA and, of course, the golf as well. We'll see you tomorrow bright and early. Good luck.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.